It should come as no surprise at this point that I love talking about the Persona characters. More specifically, analyzing their capabilities and overall competence when it comes to the most stupid scenarios. So you know what? We're gonna lower the stakes a little bit today by deciding which of these fuckers is gonna keep their jobs. That's right, folks. Today we're gonna be deciding which of these funny kids was the best at being a funny kid. Today, I am going to be analyzing every main party member and judging them based on how good they were at their job. And I don't mean any part-time work, Yosuke. I mean how good of a job they did as a member of their group. I'm gonna sit these kids down one by one, give them a little interview, go over the facts, and decide where they should end up. On the unemployment ring, or I guess back where they started, whatever you want to call that. I suppose you'd call it freelance. Now I want to make it clear, this is a performance review. I am not ranking them based on how good of social link rewards they have, how good in combat are they, or who has the best written narratives. No. This is just what they did physically that helped the team achieve their goals. I'm not a reader who's going to sit here and tell you that Ken's narrative really set up a lot of development and meaningful growth for the other characters. No, if he's not carrying his weight, he's getting dumped. Some quick other rules and parameters you're gonna wanna know. For starters, we're only going to be talking about these 3 games. Any other spin-off characters or feats done by the main characters in those games, we will maybe save for a part 2. Additionally, there will be spoilers for all 3 of these games. View at your own discretion. And finally, we are not going to be considering accomplishments made during a character's introductory dungeon. Every character is like really good and really helpful in the dungeon they are introduced in most cases. So I'm just gonna neutral that out across the board. There will be some exceptions, but we get there when we get there. Oh, and one last notice, this video was heavily inspired by Jeremy Klinger and his series, so go check that out if you like this video. With all that out of the way, hey there, my name's Joe Frederick. I'm living in your walls and desperately need fluids. And welcome to the Persona Competency Exam 2026. All right, Adam, send the first one in. Hey, Ryuji!
Shut the fuck up!
Okay, I expected that reaction. I haven't been the nicest to you in these videos, but you're gonna be pleasantly surprised today.
For real?
Starting off with Ryuji, our favorite vulgar boy is actually a lot more impressive than one might think. Sure, he's actively screaming that he's a phantom thief at any goddamn moment, but I actually think Ryuji is one of the heaviest contributors of the entire group. He's a founding member, he's the first person to bring a gun into the palace, and then immediately introduces the group to the main armory for the rest of the game. And then he creates the first mock-up for the Phantom Thieves branding and calling cards. And if you think that's impressive, that's just the first dungeon. Kind of an underrated trait of Ryuji is he's constantly throwing himself in the way of danger for his friends. And not in the like, mentally emotional, oh, he's so self-sacrificial. No, he's constantly throwing his body into oncoming danger. In the third palace, he jumps in front of a moving car to save Makoto. He then jumps in front of an attack to save Akechi and Joker in Maruki's palace, and is the one to throw himself into a boat explosion to get the rescue ship for everyone else. Okay, yes, Ryuji is one of the most reckless and loudmouthed members of the group. I mean, he was the one that got Makoto on their trail, and is one of the biggest threats to their identities getting revealed aside from the fucking hotcakes. But when you take a moment to stop and look past the vulgar in the boy, you come to find that he's actually doing a lot to contribute. Sure, he's not carrying the team, but I think he's as close to an S tier as an A can get. I just want to take this opportunity to very quickly remind everyone that we are not using social link perks or any combat abilities in these judgments. If I didn't say it here, I know some schmuck would go in the comments and say, oh, but he gets insta-kill, so he can defeat the Reaper. No, we're not talking about that. He's A tier. We move on. And move on you shall. Go on, you crazy kid. You get to stay on the Phantom Thieves.
Woo!
What's this? All my personal data has been stolen. What could I have possibly done to deserve this? Drop our meddling kids somewhere that the Persona 1 and 2 fans could never find us. Oh yeah, I'm pure evil. But what am I supposed to do to fix this problem? And you are?
The name's Preston. Preston. You could use a VPN there, slugger.
Wait a minute. Express VPN? Are we finally getting to do an ad for ExpressVPN? Are you looking to stay safe and keep your data private online? Well then, let me tell you about today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. There's a lot of scary people out there on the internet, and some of them have some nefarious intentions. And when my day-to-day life will entail researching characters, writing scripts, or trying to find a way to smuggle a live grizzly bear into a deserted island, making sure to keep what I'm doing under wraps is of the top priority for me. I can't just let anyone know I'm bringing a bear into a video.
But there's always a bear in one of your videos.
Yeah, but like, wait, how did you know? Well, ExpressVPN is the solution to that problem. Every time you connect to the Wi-Fi, whether it's at a cafe, airport, or hotel, you could be exposing your personal information to any 2-bit hacker. But with ExpressVPN, your connection is encrypted, which means no 2-bit hackers are gonna get their hands on your data. Take that, Kyle! Not only is it a good defensive tool to protect your data, you can also use it to access movies and shows outside of your country. For me personally, one of the best things I can do when I'm having an anxious or pretty rough day is watch an episode of Friends and chase it with 5 hours of Thomas the Tank Engine. But neither of those shows are available for viewing in my country. But with one click of a button, I have combined the powers of a middle-aged paleontologist with the unbridled swagger that comes with being a metropolitan steam engine.
That was almost as funny as when the bears showed it up.
So, you're actually a fan?
Of course I am. Why else would I be here?
Because you work for the company?
What company?
You know, ExpressVPN. Wait a minute, your real name is X Preston? If you want to protect your data, access content from all other countries, and avoid the pesky load times, then ExpressVPN might be right for you. Find out how you can get up to 4 extra months by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. But now that we've dealt with that, let's move on to Morgana. Oh, fuck. If I'm starting with Persona 5 this time, I have to talk about Morgana and On way earlier. And, alright, fuck it. Let's full send the cat first. We'll get to On in a minute. You know, I'm not very fond of... So as much as I hate to admit it, Morgana, despite literally being the worst character in the modern trilogy of games, is admittedly going to have to be an S tier. He's a founding member, he's responsible for teaching the early members about the metaverse and their powers, he's their means of transportation and mementos, as well as saving all of their lives when he pulled that Thanos copter stunt. He's the one to realize Akechi was the traitor, and were it not for him, Haru would have probably not been brought into the group. And that alone would be enough justification, but there's still quite a bit more that I haven't even mentioned. Not only does he get some brownie points for being the sole navigator for like 3 dungeons, but he also is the one that sniffs out and locates the treasures on basically every mission. And then finally, it's basically implied that he helps them escape during every dungeon collapse, but even if we're only going with the ones that we see ourselves, he saves all of them from getting crushed by this rock right here during the Futaba escape. So that's now 2 instances where he saves the entire party's lives with his actions. Like, guys, I hate Morgana too, but this is the one competition I will fight for him in.
And if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have to spend a whole arc playing therapist for the ungrateful furball.
God, you can really tell you've actually played the Persona games now. Look, believe me, I wanted to drop in 1 or 2 tiers for the Okumura arc alone, but he unfortunately just brings too much essential info and resources to reasonably knock him down. But let me tell you, if Yusuke came packaged with a 2005 Subaru Forester 2.5X TFT, he'd be getting bumped down a peg. All right, now beat it before I change my mind.
Come on.
Small problem here. She's not willing to speak with you.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Is she afraid that I hate her?
Well, evidence would suggest otherwise.
Oh my god. If you're a fan around here, you'll know it's been a running gag of mine that I dismiss On very quickly in my videos, touting her as boring or just a girl. And I feel like I really need to publicly clear the air here, so I'm sorry if this is a bit of a derailing, so if you don't care about this tangent, here's a timestamp, skip to it. I think On is a fine character. I'd honestly put her around C or B on my personal character tier list. And she's easily my favorite of the starting female party member trio. It's just in a lot of my comedy videos, since I'm talking about so many characters, I have to keep the pace snappy. And that usually means I have to focus on 1 or 2 character traits and exaggerate them. like Yukiko laughing at anything that moves, or Akechi being a gay twink. But like, I can't really do that with An. She doesn't really have an extreme character trait that most other characters do. When I say she's just a nice, somewhat ditzy girl, that's not a bad thing at all. Like, for example, Rise is one of my top 5 favorite characters, and she's kind of similar to An personality-wise. There's like a reason I don't make jokes about her as much, because they're just kind of good, normal characters. Like, I love Maruki, but usually don't get scripted into videos because he's usually too busy fucking the bed. Now, with all that being said, she's kind of a nothing burger in this particular conversation. This isn't to say she's bottom tier by any means. She has the advantage of being one of the founding members. She's the only way they were able to connect with Yusuke and Madarame's home. And she has occasional small moments scattered across the game, like being used as a distraction or connecting with Makoto. But like, that's kind of it. Basically, after the 3rd dungeon, after she's befriended Makoto, she's kind of done the most she's going to do on her own. I did ask the community, and about 50% of people did agree that she should go in C or D tier, while some people did offer the fact that she didn't kill Kamoshida set up the events for the rest of the game. I'll give that to her, but she's still landing around C tier.
So, what do you want me to say to her?
Just tell her she's fine. Honestly, I'm afraid of the HR letter I'm gonna get if I fire her at this point. Next up is Yusuke, and man, I kind of feel bad about this one. I love Yusuke as a character, but when you look at his feats objectively, he really doesn't do much of anything. Sure, he plays an active role in conquering his introductory dungeon, but as we previously established, we're not going to factor those in for consideration. So when you look at everything past Chapter 2, he really doesn't do much of anything. Now, in fairness, he does help redesign the Phantom Thieves branding, which does help, but to be honest, I feel like some people are giving this way too much credit. Yes, it's better, but it wasn't the design of the card that suddenly made Japan pay attention to them. It kind of had more to do with the fact that 2 cases in a row had old men confessing to crimes publicly on TV out of nowhere. From there, really the only notable thing that he does is design a tattoo for one of the guys to get a letter of recommendation in the Shido Palace. But that doesn't really amount to anything because they still have to fight him because Yusuke won't join the Yakuza. And dude, I promise I'm not just like withholding information. If you look at Yusuke's Wikipedia page, the story synopsis jumps from chapter 3 to chapter 7. And chapter 3 is just talking about him being a bum in your attic. I know that the people fought for him to be in C tier, but I can't in good faith give him anything higher than D. He didn't cause problems, but he didn't really solve a lot of them either. I'm really sorry, man, but there's just really not anything that I can use here to keep you on board. Okay, you know what? Fuck me, because Scrapped Z Archive just reminded me that Yusuke sketched a license plate from memory during the Kaneshiro dungeon, so fine, he can be C tier. Alright, you know what, Yusuke? You just had a very big fan save your ass, so you can keep your job, but remember, 3 yen an hour. Hey, Makoto, just going over your file here, and I really don't think we're gonna have any trouble. Are you doing okay? You look a little pale. Should we, like, maybe reschedule, or? In contrast to Yusuke, I actually think that Makoto is going to be our first S tier of the video. For starters, she does serve as the party's navigator for quite some time, which, reminder, we're not factoring in combat abilities, but from the narrative, she is the one leading them through battles, so we can count it here. And then from there's numerous times where she uses her position as a student council president and sister to Sai to the team's advantage. In addition to that, she's constantly helping everyone study for exams to keep up their student appearances. Her relation and access to Sai, and therefore her information, was crucial for not only the whole journey, but was particularly useful with the Akechi phone switcheroo act. Without that, Joker's corpse is doinking its head on the table. And then from there's just too many instances to count where she is the voice of reason for the group and keeping them from acting reckless and stupid. Gamers, I promise you, I am not a Makoto head. She's not even my favorite girl from that game. But I'm sorry if this is kind of just like a fast run through of these facts. It's just with Makoto, I really don't feel like I need to explain this placement as much as the others. Hey! Nijima, I don't know if you like zoned out or whatever, but you're good. You get to keep your job. You get to go back to the Phantom Thieves. Almost all of them. Are you excited? And the award for the least funny Persona joke goes to... Haru Okumura gets no screen time. So I really wanted to come in here with some crazy argument to argue Haru is secretly S tier and that everyone has been misunderstanding her. But she really just has nothing going on, man. She's the final official party member to join, so she doesn't have nearly as much time to do anything substantial to the group. But she doesn't even do anything to contribute in her own dungeon. And arguably, she does kind of make it harder. I'll give them credit for the facial scanning recognition to get through certain doors, sure, but other than that, there's nothing that she really does to help them get through the dungeon. And then when they finally get to her dad, not only is she successfully manipulated into trapping the rest of her friends, but she's not even the one to fix the problem. The fucking cat is! And in Royal, you could argue that she makes the dungeon more difficult because now we got the fucking green kazoo Jetson alien to deal with.
Yeah, man. Kind of lame. Wait, is this the only line I have for this cameo?
From there, similar to Yusuke, her only notable contribution to the progress of their journey is getting some letter of recommendation in the boat, but she still gets manipulated into fighting anyways. Adam tried to be fair and play devil's advocate and bring up the whole gardening contributions, but that's technically a social link perk. Even if she was growing the second coming of Christ with her bare hands, it wouldn't matter. I'm sorry, Haru, but you're going to be the first in D tier. Alright, let me not waste any of your guys' time on this one. Futaba's S tier, and I really shouldn't need to explain it, but let's just run it through. Her hacking skills are what shut down Medjed. She uses her hacking skills to thwart Akechi and that whole switcheroo. She also uses her hacking for the big, Phantom Thief card thing in Shibuya for the Shido Palace. She's constantly digging up information online. Futaba just is the utility tool of the Phantom Thieves. Alright, so this one's gonna require a bit more of an explanation than Futaba did. Goro Akechi. You know, usually this is when the music starts to play. So the funny twink, and Adam, please don't cock your shotgun when I say this, requires two different spots on the tier list. If we are going to be judging how competent someone is in accomplishing their goals, then Akechi kinda needs to be talked about twice because he acted as both an ally to the thieves and their major antagonist. So we need to judge him once for how good of a job he did when he was working with them, and once for how good of a job he did opposing them. Now, to start with him as an antagonist, which is a way easier discussion, we obviously can't put him in S tier because he fucking lost. But all things considered, I do think he should be on the higher end of the list rather than the lower. Because yes, he obviously made a fatal mistake with the whole pancake debacle that led to Morgana catching him. And we can also reasonably knock a few points off of him for being just fairly sketchy. You know, a lot of people were able to tell he was evil from the get-go. But even when you consider both of those factors, I still think that he did a lot very successfully in regards to, well, I guess the standard of Persona villains. He was able to successfully flip public perception on them when he killed Okumura. He got damning evidence to blackmail them with of them leaving the palaces. He got them to successfully target Sai Nijima so that he could set them up for the arrest. And were it not for the whole pancake switcheroo, he had a really solid plan on how to kill Joker and get away with it. Granted, he didn't do that, but you know, he thought of it, so that's gotta be worth something. I still think he had a very solid strategy in place, so I'm going to be putting Evil Akechi around B tier. Look, even if you think I'm being biased, you have to admit he had a better plan than Kamoshida. Now, the much more controversial topic. How do we rank Akechi as an ally to the Phantom Thieves? I've asked a lot of people on how to do this. I even put up a poll where almost the majority of people said that I'm being biased in this. Even Adam did. I'm sure he's got some funny screenshot to throw up on screen right now. But after enough reason, I'm willing to be more fair about this placement. I originally was going to give him points for how much he contributed to the side dungeon with the whole like credit card casino chip switcheroo at the end, but it could be argued that he was doing that as villain Akechi to set them up, and that's technically his introductory dungeon, so if I'm going to be following consistently with the rules of the video, we can't consider anything from that point. Then a lot of people think that I shouldn't even be talking about him like this, because he never really was a member of the Phantom Thieves. He actively was plotting their downfall for a large majority of the game. So here's the compromise. I am only going to be considering accomplishments made by Akechi during the Maruki dungeon. This was the only period of time where he was actively working with the Phantom Thieves for a mutual goal that was not their own self-destruction. And I'm going to be factoring in the Shido dungeon, but we'll get to that in a second. So with these two things in mind, what all did Akechi do? He was basically one of only two people that was actively helping Joker during the whole mind-warping fiasco. He was the one leading the investigation against Maruki while Joker was going around telling all his friends to stop being happy. He acted as the navigator for a short period of time, and this might be a bit controversial, but he technically gave his life to save Joker twice? Yeah, this is where the Shido dungeon is going to be important because this is going to be controversial. So when he gave his life during the Maruki arc, you could argue that it wasn't like as some self-sacrificial thing for Joker or the allies' sakes. He didn't want to be manipulated and taken advantage of, so he was actively rejecting reality. But we can't deny the fact that he was giving his life for the common goal of undoing Maruki's reality. He never let that interfere with the Phantom Thieves' plans, and I do think it is notable. Then in the Shido dungeon, it was a much more self-sacrificial death. He actively closed the door between the rest of the thieves and the Sea of Shadows. And by Sea of Shadows, I mean like 3 of them and Cognitive Akechi. To be honest, I think they could have taken him, but it's the gesture that counts here. And spoilers for later in the video and Persona 3, if we're going to give points to Shinjiro for sacrificing his life to save Ken, then we kinda gotta give Akechi some credit for killing himself twice. Okay, we're not counting the end credit scene where we see him walking. Until Atlas addresses it, I'm not addressing it. So yes, it might be a little weird to put the guy who actively killed 2 of his party members' parents this high, but if we're looking at objectively how good of a job Akechi did on helping the Phantom Thieves get from point A to point B, I'm going to give him A tier. He killed himself twice, you guys.
I hate you. I mean, it's not like I was your biggest fan or anything. It's not like I, decorated my room full of your awesome products and merch and wanted to show it to you.
Yoshizawa is in a weird grading curve predicament where she's a playable character, but honestly, kind of not really. She appears throughout Persona 5 Royal, but it's almost entirely all set up for the final dungeon. And when you finally get to that dungeon, she doesn't really do much other than overcome her trauma. I did that like twice last week. Come on, it's not that hard. Also, not only is it kind of weird to talk about her since her introductory dungeon is her only dungeon, but even if we did factor it in, the only thing of note that she does is intercept Joker during the intro of the game. So from there I thought, hey, maybe we judge her based on how she affected Maruki. Her realization was kind of one of the catalysts for Maruki awakening his power to rewrite reality. So then we get into the really interesting discussion of, do we like Maruki's reality? Is she responsible for ending all war? Or is she responsible for putting a false god in power? So I put that to a YouTube poll, and nobody wanted to talk about Maruki. They said, hey, she's not really responsible for all that. Don't factor him in for her placement. So that really just leaves us with only that introductory thing. You cowards weren't ready for the moral implications of Maruki's reality. So I just want everyone to know that you guys did this. So let's discuss, did Yoshizawa save Joker's life in Persona 5 Royal? No, absolutely she didn't. In Royal, due to Joker now having a grappling hook, it lets him take a different route when he's escaping the casino. This leads to him getting ambushed by around 6 shadows, which Futaba has a quippy line about,
"Even you can't take on this many."
but hurrah hooray, Yoshizawa is magically here to save the day. Look at how cool she is, doing kickflips and one-shotting people, and she's even so cool she's beating their asses in the script and can't lose cutscene.
This guy is faster than Sonic.
I have so much bitching and complaining to do about this. You know what? Before we can even begin to discuss that scene, we're doing a fucking CinemaSins parody in 2026 because we gotta rapid fire through the continuity errors here. Adam, throw up the fucking borders. First off, how the fuck did she get here? She ends up coming to help Joker because he says he's busy. While yes, there is an implication here that it's Phantom Thief business, this guy also has like 3 different jobs, 15 active relationships he's nurturing, and a shit ton of hobbies. Then her motivation for going to help is mixed because it's assumed that it was out of concern for him, but she's constantly spouting off about how she's not a Phantom Thief and doesn't want to interfere. She also has arguably less experience than Haru did when we first met her, so how the fuck is she doing all of this cool shit when Haru could barely stand up? Now, more importantly, how the fuck did she actually get there? Even if she has the Metaverse app, she'd have to know where to go, the key phrase to get in, and navigate all that bullshit to even find him. And you can't even make the argument that she like followed them there and overheard all the information because Futaba only picks up her energy reading as you are escaping. Okay. Time for the actual fight. Adam, keep up the fucking borders because we're not done. Joker is caught off guard and ambushed, which is kind of weird considering that this happened to him literally 2 minutes ago and he was able to get out of the situation just fine, but whatever. Yoshizawa shows up and Mary Sue's all over him and defeating each enemy in one attack, clearly establishing that these shadows are pushovers and the way more experienced Joker could have probably handled them just fine. Reminder, this is like her second time ever using her persona. Get shit on Haru, I guess, because somehow we're still shitting on Haru. Also, before she does that, the shadows are just like patiently standing around waiting to die, so that was nice of them. All right, Adam, you can stop the CinemaSins bit here because I'm going to talk about a lot of numbers and I doubt you want to keep doing this format for that long. So let's say we don't factor in the fact that these shadows are very clearly able to be killed in one shot and take the game at its word. What would Joker's chances be of actually winning these 2 fights back to back? Very high, actually. Yeah, I did math for this one. Can you tell I'm on like page 3 of this rant? Since Joker goes first in every battle, he can instantly remove the bird and start going blow for blow with Oze. Even if the enemy goes first, it's still not impossible. It would just be like 20% harder. He'd benefit from getting a crit or 2, but comparing their luck stats, that's not impossible. But since there's 6 of them and we only take on 3 after Yoshizawa cleaned them up, I ran the numbers and you could technically win that fight twice in a row 70% of the time if you're only limited to the stats Arsene had with no items and no other personas. There's like a 30% room for error there, but most times you're gonna be fine. But here's the thing, gang. We're not limited to just Arsene. If you do that fight later, you're gonna have like 8 other personas and 70 hours of RPG items at your disposal. We're limited in this cutscene because it's the very beginning of the game. But in the universe that this is taking place, you're so fine. Yoshizawa being there did not do anything, whether you factor in just Arsene or all the other bullshit you have at your disposal. Which, like, again, I know we're not talking about stats or gameplay in this video, but since this is literally the only thing Yoshizawa does, I have to talk about it like this. But after all that, none of this fucking matters. Because after that, she says these things in this exact order. She's going to slow them down so they can't catch you and you can escape. Since she's not a Phantom Thief, she shouldn't interfere, and then proceeds to interfere so you won't get caught. So her only established goal here is to help Joker escape, and he fucking doesn't. Adam, show how long of time it takes between her saying that and Joker getting captured. It's probably less than 60 seconds. It's also just really weird how she's constantly like, I don't agree with the Phantom Thieves, I can't interfere, and then she's actively trying to interfere at every goddamn moment, but whatever. Essentially, even if we aren't considering that and we did look at the Maruki dungeon as a whole, she doesn't really do much. She overcomes her trauma, but she doesn't really like solve any of the puzzles in that dungeon, and you could argue she actively hinders the team because she has to like boss fight them 2 or 3 times and stands against them from changing Maruki's reality. So no, I'm sorry, she's going in F tier. You don't get this long of a segment without ending up at the top or bottom. And I would be firing you if you had a name I could write in full on the pink slip. So because of a technicality, you can stay. It only took us 30 minutes, but we're finally done with Persona 5. Now's the point of the video where you might expect me to start talking about Toshiro or Zenkichi or Miku. God, it's been a while since we talked about her. I should do that soon. But for the purposes of keeping today's video concise, we're only going to be talking about the playable main characters. If we start talking about the spin-offs, it's just gonna muddy all of the conversation we've had so far, so I'd rather maybe make a sequel to this video talking about spin-off characters and how the actions taken in those games might affect the other placements. So let me know in the comments if you're liking this format and want to see another one of these. Also, you should subscribe. I don't directly ask for people to subscribe a lot, but we're getting close to 20K, that would be pretty cool. But with that out of the way, let's jump into Persona 4.
Hey, mind if I speak with you for a moment?
Oh, sure. Mr. John Persona?
It's just you Narukami.
Oh fuck, I forgot I booked cameos for this one. What can I do for you, Mr. Narukami?
Well, I was speaking with a few of the other protagonists out in the hall, and we as a collective agree it's a bit bothersome that we don't get segments in this video.
I don't really see what there is to talk about. You guys are the protagonists, so it's pretty self-explanatory.
Sure, I get that, but don't you think we deserve at least a little bit of discussion? Like, what about what we actually accomplish?
Outside of the constant glazing?
Outside of the constant glazing, yes.
Alright, fuck it, I got 30 seconds before my next interview. So tell the Dorg twins that they're gonna be in S tier because they literally saved like all of reality when they killed themselves, and we have a precedence for that being rewarded around here. Then honestly, you and the attic trash should probably be a few tiers below that, but the grading curve will put you both around S or A tier.
That's ridiculous. So you're saying we're basically just nepotismed into the top spot. I don't think I can stand for that.
What if I bumped your salary up by 20%? Starting off with Yosuke, he's got a lot of things going for him on account of being one of the first party members you get. It honestly might sound a little weird that I'm going to put him up in A tier considering he's homophobic, but just hear me out on this one. I don't condone homophobia, but when Yosuke does it, it's kind of funny. So on top of being a founding member, he's the first person to get you armed with self-defense. And next to Naoto, he's one of the main people pushing forward the investigation and contributing in group meetings. Hell, he's one of the 3 people that solves the mystery at the end of the game, otherwise known as the scene where Naoto sneezes. On top of that, he's responsible for housing their entrance to the TV world and their base of operations at Junes. And for better or worse, because this still is Teddie, he does let him basically live at his house and gives him a job. And on top of that, he sometimes will offer the protagonist to come work at Junes for part-time work. Now granted, you could argue that he should lose some points for trying to kill Namatame and getting the bad ending, but I honestly just think Yosuke is consistently contributing to the cause in so many minor and major ways that the alternate timeline where he kills a dude can be overlooked. I thought maybe it was my bias making me want to put him up in S tier, and maybe people would say that A rank was a lot more justifiable, but according to my Discord, nope, S tier for Yosuke. I guess this is kind of fair in retrospect, because in the grand scheme of Persona games, yeah, he probably should be around A tier, but as we're about to get into, considering how much his team does, yeah, he's kind of getting bumped up on a curve here. I guess I should start explaining that with... Hey, actually, we need to redo that card. It should look more like this. Yeah, sorry it's a little cramped, but I figured I would save all of us some time and say, you're all getting fired.
What? No, all right. I know that sounds bad. You can't cook? You won't get naked? What are you even good for?
Again, I can't stress enough, this is not based on how much I like these characters. Do you know how much it hurts me to put Kanji this low in any ranking? I mean, I love all these characters. There's Kanji and Kanji. But man, these three characters, I just don't have a lot to say for them. We're obviously going to have a lot to talk about with the Persona 5 and Persona 3 characters, but Persona 4 is in this weird situation where the story kind of happens around them. It's weird. Like, sure, sometimes they'll sit down and try to figure out the mystery, but then the next minute they're like going skiing and starting a band. And boy, let me tell you, I mean, we'll get there in a minute, but Naoto is really carrying this group, because before she joins, it's basically just you and Yosuke doing all the work. All right, I should probably actually explain my reasoning on these three characters. I was originally going to put Chie as low as D tier, but I decided to be a bit more fair. Oh, don't get me wrong, she does like basically nothing. One of her running jokes is she will say something useful once every 10 hours and everyone is surprised about it. But in absolute fairness to her, she is a founding member, she introduces you to the armor store, she does technically introduce you to the Midnight Channel, but it was a very popular school rumor. I feel like they would have heard about it on their own without her. And for what it's worth, those occasional Chie moments of brilliance where she says something helpful, there's something, you know, like it's enough to get her out of D tier, but Lord forgive me, she's not getting any higher than that. And then Kanji, gotta love him, but he's gotta go in D tier on this one. He doesn't actively cause problems for the group, but there is never a situation where Kanji has fixed a problem. Like, don't get me wrong, Kanji is a great friend and a good dude, but like, we're talking about what he objectively solves. And after he joins the group, he's just kind of along for the ride and there for the goofs and the watermelon. Oh, but Yukiko? I was originally gonna give her a D, but nah, I've changed my mind. She's going in F tier. So let's just get this out of the way. She does fucking nothing after she joins the group. There's never really a situation where she uses her stature as like the Amagi in Kimono Girl to like help out the group in the same way that Mitsuru does with her dad and Haru does with her dad. And she doesn't even have the like running joke of sometimes saying something useful during an investigation like Chie does. She'll sit there silently for like 2 in-game weeks and then start busting up laughing when someone shows her a dead meme on their phone. But if it were just that, whatever, D tier, she didn't cause problems. But no, then I got reminded by Cinnabonbun7389 that she actively withheld information about Adachi being the killer. Like, obviously she didn't know that he was the killer, but the whole thing with how he was at the end the night of the murder, that seems pretty fucking important, Yukiko! Like, genuinely, if she had told them that, they would have solved that case like 3 dungeons quicker. Also, this is just a side tangent, but I was doing polls on YouTube for a lot of these characters for a while, and I was trying to include segments in each character synopsis where I, like, go over what YouTube had to say about it. But these were some of the most biased polls I've ever held on my channel. It did not matter how many times I explained we're not talking about combat viability, we're not ranking based on who we like the most personality-wise, we're talking about objectively what they did. And with Yukiko in particular, there were just so many comments talking about how good of a healer she was or how good of a like combat unit she was, and I'm like, did you not read the fucking polls I've been posting every day? All right, but yeah, that's I got that out of my system. We can move on. Okay, luckily for the Persona 4 crew, they do have some other people on their team that are going to get a decent placement. Rise, I think we can safely put in the B tier. It's not like she has a crazy high list of feats that she accomplished, but the ones she did are significant. She acted as the group's navigator for the second half of the game. She's essential for tracking down people in the Shadow World once Teddie's nose runs out of juice. And she occasionally uses her status as an idol to get them past certain barriers. Like, I know the club scene wasn't that important to solving the mystery, but she did get them into a funny Persona 3 reference. I don't know. I just think B tier is fair for her. Now, Naoto, on the other hand, this is one of those Futaba explanations where I really don't need to explain it, but I will do my best to do so anyways. Naoto is essentially the only brain cell this group has for, like, the majority of the game. She's one of the 3 people to figure out who the killer is in the aforementioned amazing scene where she sneezes. She's constantly the one making actual leeway during the group meetings. She's able to use her position as a detective to get information from the police station. And let's be so for real, she is constantly Sisyphusing her team up that hill, and she refuses to get knocked down. Easy S tier. I don't feel like people will argue me on this one.
Hi, I'm SweetHo10, and on the Patreon cameo. Like with Morgana, we're gonna have to very begrudgingly give him an S rank. Well, he's fucking Teddie. He's the only one who's able to make the glasses that everyone needs to explore the fog. He also serves as the first navigator, who's essential in tracking down the targets in the Shadow World. And he also provides early expository information on how the Shadow World and shadows work. So, just with that, you think he'd sit around C/B tier, but he does kind of, in a weird sequence, resurrect Nanako? Yeah, it's still weird how he did that. But the fact of the matter is, not only is Teddie responsible for saving the life of the group's little sister, but there's just absolutely no way the group is able to save all of the characters that they did without the information and tools that were provided by Teddie. So, as much as I hate to say it, S rank. There's no Persona 4 without Teddie.
Okay, Adam only gave me 10 seconds to do the Patreon integration starting now. Go click the link in the bio below to see if you can be a Patreon member where you get early access to videos, get your name at the end of the credits, and a chance to be in my videos every once in a while. There's lots of cool behind the scenes stuff over there if you're interested. So, Mr. Iori, I've been getting a lot of complaints from some of the female staff that you supposedly hate women?
What's going on?
So unlike his contemporaries, Junpei isn't as jazzed about being your dude bro bestie right out of the gate. Which means a lot of those early-ass tutorial benefits that the other dude bro friends give, Junpei doesn't really get. He's not the one to hook the protagonist up with some weapons or armor, and for the first couple chapters of the game, he's kind of a selfish prick that gets in the way more than he solves problems. Like, don't get me wrong, he is trying to be helpful, but he's more often than not causing problems. The main example being the time that he almost killed everyone on the runaway train. From there, he spends a lot of the early hours of the game pouting and complaining that he's not the main character. Now, I do have to give him some flowers because eventually in the game he starts dating Chidori, which in turn removes like 33% of Strega. So without that, he would probably end up around D tier, but I'm gonna be nice and put him in C. So I reasonably can't keep you on board, but maybe I could make you the custodial president? That's the janitor, by the way.
Screw this! I'm out of here!
Alright, Miss Talkabout. I often find myself being the most afraid of talking negatively about Persona 3, since out of the main trilogy of games, I've found that their community is the most passionate. So please know that it is with the greatest deal of fear that I tell you that Yukari is my most confident S of the video. At least, so far. We'll get to you in a minute, Amada. Once again, like most other characters, I did ask the community for supporting evidence on what she might have done to boost up her score. But in all honesty, all of the answers people gave me, I just disagreed with. Some people tried to tell me that she was the emotional backbone and support of the team, but unless it's something major like talking a kid down from murdering their ally, I'm not counting pep talks for the most part, since almost every character has done that for another at some point. Additionally, some people tried to say she was a founding member before the protagonist showed up, but I don't think that's true, like, at all. Sure, she was there before the protagonist, but that's really the only accolade in this situation that she has. Because for one, she wasn't a founding member at all, we know who they were. And second of all, she couldn't even reliably summon her persona before he got there. That's like the very first thing we learn about her. She hadn't even been into Tartarus at that point. Then some people tried to say she was the reason they found out about the Korijo group through her meddling, and no, her snooping definitely had Mitsuru confess about that sooner, but I'm pretty positive that even if she didn't dig it up, that would have been brought up at some point, just maybe a little bit later. And it's not like that information did much for them until, well, the crucifixes, but also Fuuka was the one to actually dig up the information. Yukari just hated Mitsuru and wanted to gossip and find dirt on her. Now, she did end up becoming lesbians with Mitsuru later on, but Samantha. And then there's the alleyway scene. Oh my god, this fucking scene. So despite literally everyone's better judgment, Yukari forces Junpei and the protagonist to go start asking around in the slums for information on their school gossip. And not only do they encounter a bunch of punks, Game's words, not mine, Yukari does everything she can to provoke them.
We don't need your permission to be here. Come on, don't be intimidated by these punks. These guys are...
Dude, I cannot stress enough how this scene basically plays out like...
Let's not go ask sketchy crackheads at night about a high school ghost story.
No, we're gonna go do that exact thing.
A few moments later.
Fuck you, scum! I'm allowed to be here!
Gee, how could this have possibly happened?
There was a good chance that if Shinjiro wasn't there, all of their asses would have been beat. Or hell, even fucking killed because Yukari couldn't wait a day. Okay, and finally, no, I am not giving her credit for the protagonist's awakening. A lot of people were trying to tell me she helped contributing to them awakening their persona and stopping the shadow. And the most I'm gonna give her credit for here is waking him up. But arguably, she made the situation worse for him. She got him out of bed and then led him up to the roof where they were cornered and then fails to summon her persona and gets her ass swiftly handed to her. She is so fucking lucky that Makoto is able to pick up the pistol and the child in his head tells him to kill himself right then and there. No matter how you spin it, Yukari is at worst constantly spreading gossip and shit-talking most of her team, and at best, she's trying to be productive, but is constantly leading her allies into more danger in the process. F tier. This whole section is gonna make people think I hate Yukari. I don't. She's losing in this competition. Is this really the best excuse for a cameo we could come up with?
I didn't write it!
So I initially thought Mitsuru was going to be a super open and shut case. Smack her in S tier, she funds the whole organization. However, I do think it's a little bit fair to ask ourselves, what all do we give her credit for? So she's certainly not low. We're splitting hairs between A or S here. The Seas organization was technically founded by Akutsuki, where Mitsuru was instated as the first leader. Additionally, the organization is funded by the Kirijo family, which up until around the final third of the game is run by her dad and not exclusively her. And if we're going to suddenly start giving her credit for what her dad is responsible for, yowza! I feel like if we're being the absolute most critical we can be, we can at least give her credit for being a navigator in the beginning, holding frequent study sessions for the group like we gave Makoto credit for, taking the reins of the family business and Seas after both Akutsuki and her dad left the picture, and just generally keeping the group running. Like, yes, the protagonist is considered the leader of the whole group, but let's be so for real, Mitsuru is the real MVP of this team. I will say that her Wikipedia page tries to give her credit for everyone retaining their memories during the final cutscene. And that's kind of bullshit, because how the fuck would Ken and Koromaru have been affected by that? I don't know, one could maybe argue she should be an A tier because she gets carried by nepotism, but come on guys, it's fucking Mitsuru. Anyone who tries to speak against her is going to end up in the Squidward torture device. So like, are you here to promote something, or?
I don't know, man. I just had like a free afternoon.
Could you like, at least try to sound like Mitsuru or play into this bit at all?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hamburger.
Oh my fucking god. It's the bear-killing A-trainer himself, Akihiko. A bit of a fan favorite around these parts. But how does he place in today's competition? Let's find out. He's the person to introduce you to the weapons dealer, like we gave Ryuji credit for. He's responsible for scouting both Junpei and Koromaru. He helps convince Shinjiro to rejoin the group for a period of time. He's one of the actual founding members and the first to explore and study Tartarus. He's the person to console Ken, and one could argue he saved Junpei from almost getting all of the guys murdered. I was originally going to put Akihiko around A tier because I thought, yeah, he does a lot, but if he wasn't in the game, would it really be that different? But then I realized he's responsible for bringing these three people into the group. Not only that, he talked that one into staying. If you were to take him away from this equation, this is what you're left with.
This isn't that bad, actually.
So because of his overall competence and butterfly effect on blah blah blah, you can put him in S tier still. Okay, Mr. Aragaki. Wait, where the fuck are you? So Shinjiro has easily the least amount of screen time from anyone in this video, but that doesn't mean his contributions are for naught. Not only is he responsible for saving the trio when Yukari tries to get them all fucking killed, but alongside Akihiko and Mitsuru, he's one of the actual first members to explore Tartarus. Additionally, he is known for preparing meals for the other dorm mates, most specifically Koromaru though. And finally, but most importantly, he is directly responsible for saving Ken from not only taking his own life, but also from Takaya's attempts to fucking kill him. Now, one could argue that Shinjiro should lose some points considering it was his persona that killed Ken's mom, and he was doing shady deals with Strega. I will be taking these into account, but they're not going to plummet his score since they don't actually halt any progress, considering that his actions are not only considered the emotional and mental turning point for most of the team, directly acting for a central motivator for arguably half of them, and he directly saved the lives of 1 to 3 people depending on how you look at it, I'm going to rank him in B. I really wish I could put him higher because I adore Shinjiro, but apparently he's not as competent and productive as... I think it's best if we just moved on.
There! Hold still!
I like Ken. I often think he's a bit overhated in the community, both from a gameplay and narrative perspective. Not only will I die on the hill that he's a better support unit than Yukari in Persona 3 Reload, here's that rant on screen, fight me, but I think he gets hated on a bit too much about his personality often being boiled down to just an edgy kid throwing a tantrum, which I don't think is fair in most cases. However, this video is one of those cases. When you look at Ken's direct contributions to the group objectively, horse on a beach moment, he came into the group with the express purposes of killing Shinjiro, then himself, to avenge his mother's death. Now, of course, I know he's a child and we shouldn't really judge his decision-making skills, but this video is literally the one time I'm not supposed to play emotional devil's advocate, so we're judging him on his decision-making skills. Yes, eventually Akihiko does talk him into his senses and fighting with the team for the right cause. But it's not like after that he starts making some crazy elite tier plays for the team. No, he's just doing the job that he said he was going to do, but now he's doing it for the right reasons. And that's pretty much all there is to say about Ken. His reckless actions got Shinjiro killed and then he stuck around. F tier. Next up is Fuuka, and like the other navigators, this one's going to be very quick and brief. She gets points for helping them navigate Tartarus when Mitsuru can't use her power. You know what? I'm not redoing that line. Leave it in. She then does help Yukari dig up information about the Kirijo group, but like I said before, I feel like this would have come up at some point, so this isn't a big win, but just worth mentioning. Aside from that though, not really too much special. She consoles Junpei after Chidori's death, which is something. But like I said before, we're not really factoring in stuff like that too much, so let's just go ahead and throw her into high C tier. This might be a bit lower than you were expecting, but it's because I have this whole other rant.
So help me God, you put her lower than B tier, I'm gonna navigate you to the nearest morgue.
Alright, Aigis is kind of a weird one, but I'm gonna nip it in the bud pretty easily here. While I do feel like the relationship between the protagonist and Aigis is the emotional backbone of the game, you could maybe reasonably remove it entirely and the game still be what it is. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should or that it's expendable, it's the heart and soul of that game. But if we're talking about objectively, the relationship between Aigis and the protagonist is very isolated. She comes in to fight shadows, which we're not really talking about in this video. She's got some quirky, quippy lines, which are funny, but that's almost it. You could maybe try to argue she belongs in C or B tier because of that, but she will ultimately get into S tier because of what she does with Thanatos, Ryuji, and the protagonist. What she did in that fight and, you know, the whole sealing away thing, that's like the catalyst for the whole story and is what gives the world another chance at living. So S tier for that and that alone. And for our final entry of the day, we have everyone's favorite pupper, Koromaru. It's time to talk about the funny dog! Everyone get excited! Put your ears on! Ow! So the Koromaru discussion is not that deep, gamers. He is a dog, and he literally does 2 things of note. One is that he defeats one of the big strong shadows on his own off screen. Cool, that's something. But the main thing we need to talk about is how he stops a mass crucifix from killing all of the party members and in turn, the entire human race. I originally thought maybe I should put this in A tier since he genuinely only does one thing in the entire game. But because that one thing is saving all of reality, S tier. We ended on a high note. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have officially ranked every single Persona character based on how much they actually accomplished. Here's the final tier screen. And right next to it is the tier list on who got to keep their jobs and who was just straight up fired. Let me know in the comments what you would have changed differently. Do you think someone deserves to be higher or lower? Do you think I'm a hack who should just focus on Rampa? Or do you maybe want to see a part 2 of this video? I don't really have a bit on how to close this one out. Adam, I am leaving it up to you. I love Persona 1.